Joining me on the program now, Professor Jonathan Boston from Victoria University in Wellington. Professor, good morning. Thank you for your time today.
Good morning, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
This is a complex issue and one which people have some very strong views and opinions on. And much has changed, as I say, in the last couple of weeks. Is there perhaps hope for a prospect of peace for Israel, for Gaza, or would we be naive to think so?
Well, I think there's always hope, Andrew, and it is wonderful that there are many, many people working hard to secure a ceasefire. I'm hopeful that there will be one within the coming days or weeks, but of course I may be wrong. Hopes have been raised previously, and those hopes have been dashed. But whatever the outcome in the next few days or weeks, we have to reckon with the fact that we have an ongoing challenge in reaching a long-term settlement in that part of the Middle East.
Yep.
There has been conflict of one kind or another on and off for a very long time, in modern times for almost 80 years. And I used to be more hopeful than I am now about the prospect of an enduring, just peace. I'm a little less optimistic about that now, because so many things have been done that will make a durable, just peace involving two independent states in that part of the world, but almost impossible.
The two-state solution comes up a lot, and that has the various incarnations of this have been tried over the years. Some people would say that it's impossible to have a two-state solution when both of those states refuse to recognize each other's right to exist. The worst of all neighbors, some would say, and certainly reinforced by what happened on October the 7th and what has happened since.
Yes, so I think at the heart of this dispute is the fact that you have, from some 80 years ago, a situation where the United Nations created the state of Israel, and indeed the state of Palestine, but that was never fully recognized. Israel never accepted the existence of a separate state of Palestine and didn't accept the borders that the United Nations had drawn. And then ever since then, we've had a situation where, in effect, Israel has refused to accept the existence of a separate Palestinian state with at least reasonable levels of statehood and independence.
Yeah.
And many on the Palestinian side and in the wider Arab world have been reluctant or have refused to accept the existence of the state of Israel. And that, of course, is the product of an enormous amount of grief and suffering and injustice across a very long period of time. So it's understandable. But unfortunately, it'd be fair to say over the last 40 or 50 years, the actions, particularly of Israel, have made it more difficult to create a separate, stable Palestinian state.
Yep.
I went to Israel about 43 years ago in 1982. And at that point, there did seem to be the possibility of a separate Palestinian state, of some integrity being created. This is before there were massive Israeli settlements on the West Bank, and before all the challenges that have occurred in Gaza with the rise of Hamas and so forth. But now, of course, if you just look at the geography of the country and what has happened in terms of Israeli settlements, the wall, and of course the terrible conflicts that have occurred, particularly in Gaza, creating a separate state is going to be exceptionally difficult, simply logistically, let alone, if you like, in terms of the diplomatic side of things.
Now, New Zealand, well, more specifically, Our Foreign Minister Winston Peters, on behalf of New Zealand, made the step to not at this stage recognise a Palestinian state, saying that the conditions weren't right. Our Prime Minister has said it's a case of when, not if. Other nations, including some of our allies, did take the step of recognising a Palestinian state, but then put some terms and conditions on it. So actually our positions may not be too dissimilar. Do you think that was a wrong step, given what has happened since, Jonathan?
Well, personally, I'm disappointed in the decision of the New Zealand government. I mean, practically, it doesn't change things very much. It's a symbolic act to recognise the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to statehood. Something which was recognised by the UN almost 80 years ago, but which has never been fully realised.
Yeah.
The United States, because of its role as one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, has blocked Palestine becoming a UN member, a full UN member, and it looks likely that position will persist for some considerable time. So whatever New Zealand does won't affect the status of Palestine within the UN system. But I do think that since, the late 1940s, when the UN recognized Israel as a separate state and supposedly established the state of Palestine, ever since then, and it's now almost 80 years, we have been waiting for, quote, the right time.
Yeah.
And that's a very long time for the Palestinians to wait. And for those who say, well, we've got to wait further, I suppose, one of my questions would be, well, what criteria or criterion would need to be satisfied for the wait to finish?
I think one of the things that people are particularly concerned about in this space, and maybe some of these questions have been answered by the proposed peace plan, that recognising a Palestinian state led by Hamas, also recognised as a terrorist organisation, that is unacceptable or untenable. With the new peace plan on the table, which says that, well, it wouldn't be a deal with Hamas, it would be a deal with an interim Palestinian authority. This seems to have a US backing and the backing of most of the surrounding Arab states as well, a tentative positive response even from Hamas. This certainly continues to be a live possibility, if you like, a pathway to peace, do you think?
Yes, I hope so, Andrew. But in the end, if a separate Palestinian state is to be established, which has integrity and some genuine independence in respect of the various things that statehood typically implies, control of its own borders, control of the tax system, some degree of control over the use of force, certainly internally, in terms of a policing capacity and so on. If that is to be realized, the Palestinian people are going to have to be given the right to elect whoever they choose to be elected to represent them in whatever democratic institutions are established. And in that context, as you would appreciate, it's very difficult to kind of rule out particular political parties or movements simply because we don't like what they stand for.
I mean, even if Hamas wasn't there...
And this is an issue for many democracies, I have to say.
Exactly. And even if Hamas was no longer a player, or it changed its name, or it had different people leading it, the likelihood of democratic elections in Gaza... electing a government which had a positive view of Israel would be somewhat unlikely, if not impossible.
Indeed. And in terms of Gaza, we have to recognize that much of the infrastructure and a very high proportion of the dwellings have been destroyed. You can't have an election realistically in that kind of context. So it will take years to create the conditions in which there could be anything resembling free and fair elections in Gaza. And I appreciate this is one of the reasons why there has to be probably quite a long transition period. my concern in this, Andrew, in the end, would be there are very strong elements within Israel who are committed to never having a separate Palestinian state of any degree of integrity or separateness. And there's a very, very strong Christian Zionism movement internationally, which has a similar view that a separate Palestinian state would always represent a serious threat to Israel, and any serious threat to Israel has to be countered.
Yeah.
So I'm not overly hopeful that even if we can get a settlement in the immediate future to the current conflict, I'm not overly hopeful about the long term. My fear, and I hope I'm wrong, I really do, Andrew, my fear is that we are going to have just more and more years, if not decades, of suffering and disputes and conflict and repression. We also need to bear in mind, Andrew, that of course the conflict in the Middle East is only one of about 30 conflicts going on in the world right now. Yes. There is suffering and injustice, inhumanity of bestial proportions happening all over the world, which reflects on the dark side of humanity. So we have to be realists in this context. As a Christian, I'm very mindful of the enormous capacity both for good and for evil on the part of human beings. And sadly, at the moment, we are witnessing some of the most dreadful aspects of the dark side of humanity.
This is a complex issue, and very much appreciate the way in which you've unpacked that and explained it to us. It's difficult to even have a conversation about these issues, even within churches or even families sometimes, Jonathan. So I appreciate your measured and well thought through responses into this. Let's keep talking, let's keep thinking, let's keep praying into these issues. Appreciate what you bring to the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. My pleasure. All the very best.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.